I remember the moment the frequency shifted. Not the sound itself, but the silence around it. The kind of silence that makes you stop mid-sentence, mid-thought. I was 2 hours into my overnight shift at the temporary field command just north of Dover Cliffs. Below us, the channel breathed in slow pulses, cold, ancient, methodical. The sonar operators had gone quiet, eyes glued to their screens like they were watching something breathing. Major Hartley, one of them, whispered, "Grid Echo 7 just pinged, but there's no transponder. Depth profile's off." I leaned in. There it was, a slow, slinking echo pattern, like something moving but not wanting to be found. Too consistent for drift, too irregular for marine life, but too smooth, too cold, to be mechanical. I narrowed my eyes. Repeat sweep, triple burst varied band. Log every anomaly. Do not wake the Admiral unless it sings. Lieutenant Marks finished for me, half a grin trying to cut the tension. No one laughed. I stared at the screen for maybe a minute too long. It wasn't just the pattern. It was the timing. This signal, it echoed a rhythm I'd seen once before 12 years ago. Classified, then buried. My fingers hesitated above the alert console, and that's when the outer door slammed. Not open slammed. Steel on steel. Startled shouts from the guards. A command barked, "Stand down!" Another voice rising above, firm, familiar. Too familiar. I froze. That voice didn't belong in this room. Didn't belong in this time. Gregory Shaw, one of the junior techs, blinked toward the camera feed. "Isn't that the guy from the photos? Like from back when—" "Shut it!" I snapped. Because it was him. And the man who'd vanished from military intelligence records 6 years ago. The same man I once called Uncle. He shouldn't have had clearance. He shouldn't have had access. He shouldn't have been anywhere near this operation. And yet he walked into that room like he owned it. ID badge still clipped to a weathered jacket. Boots caked in red English clay. Eyes bloodshot, but not from sleep. From obsession. "Lucille Hartley," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're out of uniform." I blinked. "Excuse me." He pointed a gloved finger at the sonar array. "That signal, you know exactly what it is. And you're hiding it." My team looked at me, then back at him. "This woman," he continued, "is falsifying intelligence reports, feeding bad data to the ministry, covering up an intrusion under sovereign waters, and I have reason to believe she's not acting alone." Nobody moved. No one dared to. Even the air held its breath. I stepped forward, calm on the outside. But my throat was dry. "You're trespassing on an active Royal Navy operation, Gregory." He stepped closer. "No, I'm exposing a traitor." Security moved in, but I raised a hand. "Not yet." His eyes locked on mine. There was something behind them. Not madness, not rage. Conviction. He believed it. Whatever theory he'd built in his mind, he believed every word of it. And that was more dangerous than any weapon he could have carried. He turned toward the screen. "Ask her. Ask your commanding officer why she deleted sonar logs from last week. Why that signal isn't in the official record. Why her biometric access was flagged in the deep storage vault 2 nights ago." I felt my heart skip a beat. Because some of that was true. Fragmented. Twisted. But not invented. "Who the hell let him in?" I asked, barely keeping my voice level. One of the guards spoke up, nervous. His ID scanned green. "Full clearance dated March 2021. That couldn't be right. Those systems should have been wiped." Gregory gave me a half smile, tired but sharp. "You thought they deleted me. They just misplaced me." He held up a USB drive. "Old, scratched, government issue. Everything you've buried," he said, "is still alive, and it's screaming from the bottom of the channel." The room went still again, but not out of fear, out of confusion, doubt. And just like that, the signal on the screen, that slow, deliberate heartbeat of sound, pulsed again. Louder this time. Closer. It wasn't done, and neither was he. They didn't cuff him. That was the first red flag. Gregory Shaw had just stormed into a live naval operation, accused a ranking officer of treason, bypassed biometric protocols, and they didn't cuff him. Instead, they escorted him gently into the auxiliary comms room, gave him water, closed the door. Standing protocol for ex-intel, Commander Halverson mumbled to me when I questioned it. Psych profile flagged him high function. He still holds a Class B clearance. Technically. That word hung in the air like mold. Technically, we couldn't arrest him. Technically, we had to listen. And that's when it started. The shift. The sideways glances, the long pauses after I gave orders, the quiet hesitations that hadn't been there an hour ago. They didn't say it out loud yet. But I knew. I felt it. The doubt. He'd planted it like a slow-burning mine right beneath my credibility. And now they were walking across it one by one, listening for the click. I tried to regain control. Resume sonar sweep. Triple burst across deep echo. I want full spectrogram isolation, no shared channels. No one moved. Lieutenant Marks cleared his throat. Ma'am, if I may. He didn't finish. Say it. I said sharper than I meant to. Marks looked at the others, then back at me. Is it true? What he said about Athena down? The room contracted. That phrase hadn't been spoken aloud in years. It wasn't just a code name. It was an unmarked scar buried inside a dead operation classified beyond even most Joint Command. It shouldn't have existed in his mouth. I stared at Marks. Where did you hear that Gregory said it? Right before he handed over the USB? He said you'd understand. My spine locked. I wanted to say it was fake. A trap. But lies don't survive long in a room full of encryption analysts. And I'd just stepped into one with blood on my boots. I turned toward the glass window that looked into the comms annex. Gregory was sitting calmly, arms crossed, like a man watching dominoes fall just the way he'd arranged them. I walked in. Where did you hear that phrase? He didn't answer, just nodded toward the security camera in the corner. You're being recorded, Lucy. So let's not pretend. I hated that nickname. He leaned forward. You think they'll cover for you once this gets out? You think protocol means anything to a system that's already compromised? I stepped closer, voice low. You don't get to weaponize ghosts, Gregory. He smirked. They're only ghosts if they're dead. And you know damn well Athena Down never died. It was relocated, fragmented, and someone restarted it, under your watch. He slid the USB drive across the table. Encrypted logs, frequency maps, metadata signatures. Not mine, yours. I didn't pick it up, because I recognized the casing. I had one just like it years ago, back when I was stationed in Reykjavik, back when Athena Down was still theoretical. He saw the recognition in my face. They'll turn on you, he said softly. All it takes is one crack. And you're leaking. I stood frozen, because he wasn't entirely wrong. Athena Down was the code name for a trial sonar inversion system, a mechanism to create acoustic dead zones in hostile water. We'd buried it after the second trial failed. The data had been locked behind 3 layers of joint intelligence, but 2 weeks ago, one of our passive buoys in the channel had pinged an acoustic null zone, exactly like the Athena test. I never filed the match. I wasn't sure why. Instinct maybe, or fear, or just fatigue. But Gregory knew, and now so did my team. I stepped out of the room. Commander Halverson was waiting. Ma'am, he said carefully, we've had 2 separate personnel flag the anomaly log for Athena reference. The oversight office just pinged us. They want access to the full system registry. I blinked. Already? He nodded. Gregory's drive included one of your comms signatures from last week. The oversight team is requesting clarity. And that was it. The quiet unspooling. My control of the room unraveling thread by thread. The command I'd built over years now being pulled apart in minutes. Not because I was guilty, but because I was no longer clean. That's the thing no one tells you, how fast authority dissolves under suspicion. One whisper, one code word, one misplaced packet of data. Suddenly you're not the officer in charge. You're the question mark. And Gregory, mad, broken, forgotten Gregory was the one holding the answer. I waited until 0200 to access the shadow server. Technically, I was still authorized, temporarily. Oversight hadn't issued a formal suspension yet, but the air had changed. People moved differently around me now. Lighter footsteps, shorter eye contact. They weren't sure if I was about to be removed or reassigned. Neither was I. The secure lab was empty, its walls humming with cold fluorescence. Just me, a bank of terminals, and 2 decades of sonar data stitched together like veins under glass. I keyed in a bypass. No one would notice, not unless they were looking, and no one was looking at me anymore, just watching. I pulled up the sonar records from last Friday. The same grid, same depth band. I remembered the ping, then brief, faint, but symmetrical. At the time, I'd dismissed it. Currents shift, rock formations bounce noise, dead zones happen. I'd told myself all the right things. Now I watched the playback again. It was still faint, but not random. Too clean. The waveform echoed once then twice in perfect delay. Not just a sound, a pattern. I cross-referenced the frequency signature with archived Athena down files off books black box access. And it matched. Not perfectly, but enough to make the room feel colder. Something out there was using the same acoustic cloaking system we mothballed years ago. But it wasn't military, not ours. I pulled the surrounding telemetry current salinity drift patterns. If the signal source was moving, it was doing so against the tide, against logic. A shape began forming in my mind. Not sonar, not sub, something in between. I leaned back just slightly. The room creaked. The system blinked. Query complete. 27 echoes logged in the last 4 days, all clustered between 200 and 300 meters, all following the same arc, like someone or something was tracing the underside of the channel like a wire. I saved the report to a temporary cache, encrypted it under a new tag, and still something itched beneath my ribs, a tension I couldn't name, like someone was listening. Across the base in the old infirmary wing, Gregory Shaw sat upright on a cot paper scattered around his feet like broken sails. They'd taken his drive, his phone, his badge, but not his memory, and not his hands. He'd been sketching since they put him there. First crude signal maps, then frequency arcs, now something else. He folded each page into a triangle marked with red ink at the tips, laid them side by side in a spiral. To anyone else, it looked like an old man wasting paper. To Gregory, it was motion, not of the paper, but of the thing beneath the sea. He whispered it out loud. 7-degree deviation. Constant countercurrent. He'd been watching sonar his entire life. He knew how water moved, what it pushed, what it swallowed. But this wasn't drift, wasn't search. It was a route. He wrote the numbers again. Time codes. 0347, 0611, 1026. Each matched the sonar ping intervals from different locations. No two were identical. But everyone sang the same 3 notes, ultra-low pulses that weren't even detectable unless you layered and inverted the output. He was doing it manually, by ear. One more page, one more fold, then he stopped. The spiral was complete. It pointed northeast, straight to a section of the seabed labeled acoustically null, pending terrain scan. He looked up. They'd called him crazy when he said the old signal was back, told him he was delusional, that the system had moved on. But systems forget. People forget. Machines don't. I pulled the backup logs from the sector buoys. No automated alerts had been issued, which meant someone either tampered with the thresholds or rewrote the triggers entirely, and that would take access. The kind of access no one in this room was supposed to have anymore. Not even me. Suddenly, the intercom clicked. Major Hartley, medical requests your presence. Gregory Shaw's showing signs of fatigue. I almost laughed. Fatigue? He'd just torn a hole in a decade of protocol, and now they were worried he looked tired. Still, I went. When I entered the room, he didn't look up, just nodded toward the spiral at his feet. You saw it, didn't you? I said nothing. He didn't wait. It's not a ghost. It's not a glitch. It's a pattern. They never buried it. They just moved it. Out here. Under us. He tapped the center of the spiral with his finger. And someone's using it. I stepped closer. Not as a niece, not as an officer, just a witness. What are they tracing? He looked at me for the first time. The anger was gone. Just calculation now. A map. Of what? He leaned back. Pressure ridges, weak points, anchor lines, sonar shadow corridors. You build a shape big enough, hidden enough, and deep enough you can erase anything I finished. He nodded. It's not about seeing what's there. It's about not seeing what's underneath. My skin prickled, because I knew he was right. And worse, so did someone else, which meant the question was no longer what was coming. It was who had known, and for how long. There's a moment just before you make the wrong decision when silence feels like safety. It isn't. I stood outside the infirmary door, staring at the flickering hallway lights. My fingers wrapped around the emergency override key. To bring Gregory anywhere outside this room without authorization wasn't just a risk. It was a break. But then again, the system was already broken. The data we had wasn't enough. Not in pieces, not in fragments, and if I waited for the official chain of command to care whatever was moving out there would be long gone or buried again. I keyed in the code. No alarms triggered. Gregory raised his eyebrows when I opened the door. "We're going somewhere," I said. "No cuffs." "Not today." He followed without a word. The auxiliary operations room was 3 levels down, tucked beneath the old cold storage wing barely used since the base converted to digital relay, which made it perfect. I sealed the bulkhead behind us, disconnected external comms, rerouted the sonar uplinks to local display. No remote eyes, no live sync, just one sealed node and 2 people nobody trusted anymore. Gregory paced as I loaded the raw frequency logs. He kept glancing at the ceiling as if expecting a drone to drop from it. "They know we're gone," he muttered. "No," I said. "They think I'm interrogating you." He snorted. "That'd be cute." The data came up in a slow cascade, long bands of static color-coded anomalies, irregular curves rendered in haunting symmetry. I filtered the waveforms manually, one echo at a time, layering the curves until something began to take shape. A bloom, a loop, a signature. Gregory stepped forward, squinting. "I've seen that." He didn't sound surprised. I clicked another file, off-record archives from the North Atlantic Defense Network. It took 12 seconds to decrypt. The screen filled with data. 4 years ago, a NATO-registered stealth sub, the Salton Reach, vanished during a classified signal sweep north of Iceland. Declared lost, presumed crushed by pressure, no wreckage found, no comms recovered. But here it was, its engine signature, faint but traceable, embedded in the Dover frequency logs, time-stamped, matched, perfect. Gregory leaned in. "That sub was redeployed." I stared at the overlapping maps. He was right. There was no sign of damage, no emergency beacon, just silence. And now movement, far from where it was last seen. "They moved it," I whispered. "They moved the whole platform." Gregory's eyes flicked to mine, and they masked the relocation using Athena down. The math came next, unforgiving cold. If the Salton Reach had been reactivated without official notice, it meant one of 2 things. Either someone had breached black-level military protocols, or someone within the command structure had authorized it and buried the trail. Either way, it wasn't rogue. It was organized, sanctioned. Gregory sat down, rubbing his temples. "I tried to chase the logs last year, got blocked at every door. They said my credentials were outdated." "They were," I said, flatly. He looked at me. "So I broke back in." I didn't respond, because in that moment I understood. We were on the same side now, not by trust, by necessity. There was no time left for permission, only proof. I pulled a fresh directory and began collating the timecode intervals. The pattern emerged fast, almost too fast. Every signal logged within a 3-hour window. Every path traced along a known naval shadow line. Each drop coincided with a classified logistics gap in regional sonar coverage. Someone had choreographed this. Gregory exhaled slowly. "You're not going to be able to report this." "I'm not trying to report it." I looked at him. Really looked. "Gregory, I need you to help me build a replication trace. Something undeniable. Something clean. If we trigger oversight too early, they'll wipe it." He nodded. No bravado, no bitterness, just clarity. It was the same look I'd seen in my own mirror the night I accepted my first covert post. The look of someone who knows the system isn't going to save you. You do realize, he said after a beat, that the moment this goes live, we won't just be targets. We'll be evidence. I nodded. Then we better be precise. We worked in silence after that. Two sets of hands, two minds that had once walked opposite ends of the same war, now pulling the same thread from the same wound. I didn't know what it would mean if we got through this, if the evidence held, but I knew what it would mean if we didn't. Nothing. It would mean nothing ever happened. Nothing was ever heard. No one ever knew. Just another signal, swallowed by the sea. The emergency meeting was called for 05 Sorrow. No preamble, no agenda. Just one word in the subject line: security breach. We were herded into the primary operations briefing room, metal chairs, red lighting eyes, scanning. No one spoke to me. They didn't have to. I could feel it. Gregory had been escorted to a secured comms terminal under guard. I wasn't allowed near him, not after what I'd done bypassing security rerouting systems, pulling data from encrypted backups. They weren't calling me a traitor. Not yet. But they'd stopped calling me Major. Rear Admiral Keene stood at the front, arms crossed, the usual weight of command heavy across his chest like it was tailored there. He didn't sit, didn't blink much either. He looked straight at me. Major Hartley, you've requested classified airspace and invoked Section 7 clearance override. Explain yourself. My voice came out steady. Too steady. Sir, I have reason to believe a stealth-class vessel presumed lost in the North Atlantic has been redeployed within domestic waters using acoustic inversion tech modeled after Project Athena down. That room full of technicians, officers, analysts went still. Not a sound. But the silence wasn't blank. It was bracing. Keene lifted a brow. You're referring to the Sultan Reach. I nodded. And you're claiming... What exactly? That this vessel declared missing 4 years ago is now operating under covert authority. I'm not claiming it. I've verified its energy signature. And... He cut me off with a raised hand. Who else has seen this data? My jaw clenched. Gregory Shaw and I. That was it. I didn't even finish the sentence. The room shifted. The suspicion went from subtle to sharp. You collaborated with a suspended intelligence officer whose clearance was revoked after a psychological disqualification, Keene said coldly. He wasn't wrong, I snapped. Not loud, not defensive, just final. He identified the signal first. He recognized the trajectory. The system tried to erase him and it almost worked, but he was right. Keene's face darkened. Or he manipulated you. You ever consider that? He didn't have to, I replied. The data speaks for itself. That's not what I see, a voice called from the side. Commander Halverson. He stepped forward holding a tablet. According to the metadata logs, most of the files you're presenting were accessed under unauthorized credentials. That's a breach, not a discovery. I stared at him. This isn't about credentials. It's about the fact that we've got a ghost ship inside British territorial waters, running black-level sonar masking, and no one can explain why. Keene didn't flinch. Perhaps because there's nothing to explain. Perhaps the signal was misread, or fabricated. Then came the knife. Or perhaps you've spent too long under pressure, too long with classified ghosts and grieving family names. He said it with precision. He said it to bury me. And maybe it would have worked if not for the screen behind him. It flickered once. Then again. Then the comms officer called out, Sir, we're receiving a live stream from the auxiliary node. It's locked to encryption tier 4. We can't override it. Keene turned fast. Who initiated it? No one answered. Because we all knew. The screen came alive. And there he was. Gregory Shaw. In uniform. Not regulation, but precise. Trimmed beard. Cold eyes. Voice calm. This is Commander Gregory Shaw, former Section Chief, Subsea Intelligence Joint Defense. The data you are about to see is not conjecture. It is truth fragmented and buried by men who no longer understand the weight of silence. He tapped a console off screen. The map appeared. 3 layers deep. Sonar paths, submerged routes, power signatures. A ripple of shifting color across the English Channel mapping the precise motion of something large, cloaked, and deliberate. Overlay Sultan Reach, ID confirmed, trajectory-mapped time-stamped logs, acoustic inversions, pressure corridor bypasses, then the name. Athena Down Ghost. The room inhaled all at once. Gregory kept speaking. This vessel was not destroyed. It was reclassified, repurposed, and hidden. Not from enemies, from oversight. The signal patterns match 87% of archived Athena Down prototypes. The acoustic null zones you've been logging for months, they're not malfunctions, they're shields. He turned his head slightly, looking through the feed. And the only person who had the courage to follow the pattern was the one you're trying to silence. I watched Keen as the colors drained from his face. He wasn't angry, he was calculating. Behind him, Commander Halverson stepped back. No one moved to cut the feed, no one dared. The silence that followed wasn't like before. It wasn't weightless. It was full. Full of exposed truth, of names about to be named, of systems about to collapse. Gregory leaned forward once more. If you're not willing to speak the truth, I will. The feed cut, dead air. Then Keen spoke. Escort Major Hartley to containment for security review. But even as the guards stepped forward, they didn't reach for their weapons. They looked at me, not as a traitor, but as a threat to everything they thought was protected by silence. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. They kept me in a holding room with mirrored walls and a table bolted to the floor like I might suddenly forget my name and start tearing apart the steel. But I wasn't the threat here. Not really. 2 hours passed, maybe 3. The buzz in the ceiling never stopped, like the building was thinking about what to do with me. When Rear Admiral Keen walked in, he didn't sit. He stood in the doorway, arms behind his back, like a judge who already knew the sentence. You've violated at least 7 security protocols, he said, voice flat. You rerouted classified comms, bypassed biometric seals, released encryption keys to a former officer under suspension. Anything you want to add? I stared at the table. Yes, I said. I did it willingly. He waited silent. I lifted my eyes to his, and I did it alone. That changed something. His posture didn't shift, but the way he looked at me did. The way a man recalculates risk not out of doubt, but strategy. You're protecting Shaw, he said. I'm protecting the record, I replied, and if you try to bury this, I'll find another way to make it surface. Keen stepped inside, closed the door behind him. Do you understand what you're doing? I'm handing you a narrative, I said steady. One that keeps a retired officer off the stand. One that contains the breach without exposing systemic decay. One that makes this look like an overreach from one desperate woman with something to prove. He studied me like I was a chess piece that had just moved sideways. And why would you take the fall I didn't answer right away? Because the real answer wasn't for him. It was for my mother. It was for the 23-year-old version of me who once sat in a submarine bay with a report she wasn't allowed to file. It was for the girl who got used to being cut off mid-sentence by men who thought clearance meant superiority. I'm not falling, I said at last. I'm drawing a line. He tapped the table once with his knuckle. If I open an investigation, it becomes official. You'll be suspended pending review. Possibly dismissed. I nodded, then open it. And Shaw. He never accessed the drive. He never touched the systems. I brought him the data. I walked him through it. The breach is mine. He didn't push further. Didn't need to. He had his scapegoat, but also his shield. An investigation meant delay. Delay meant preservation. Preservation bought time, and time would expose everything. Expect reassignment by morning, he said, turning toward the door. Full review. No field clearance, no comms access. And you don't speak to the press. I wasn't planning to. He paused at the threshold. You realize this ruins your career. I let out something that wasn't quite a laugh. It wasn't a career, it was a mission. And you just reminded me why. When the door closed behind him, the room felt smaller, but not weaker. It was quiet, contained, like pressure before a detonation. They let me walk out on my own. Gregory was already gone, transferred to an undisclosed facility under protective conditions. They wouldn't say where, but I knew. I'd seen the logs. He was safe, not free, but alive, unindicted. That was the deal. They'd bury the detail as long as they had me as the name to stamp. They needed the story. Not the truth, but stories leak. And the data it never forgets. I stopped just before the exit ramp. One of the junior techs stood there, stiff-backed eyes, nervous. He handed me a sealed envelope, no return code, just a single red dot in the corner. I opened it once I was outside. Inside, one line of text. Handwritten. "You didn't break the chain, Lucy. You rewired it." Gee. I folded the paper, put it in my inside pocket, walked into the wind like it owed me an answer. The boxes didn't take long to pack. 2 uniforms, a leather-bound operations log, and the old challenge coin Commander Halverson had given me back when things were simpler before trust had to be earned in blood and silence. No one came to say goodbye, and I didn't expect them to. The corridors felt unfamiliar now, even though I'd walked them every day for the past year. Same flickering bulbs, same hum of air through reinforced vents. But everything felt thinner, like the place had shed me before I could shed it. Outside, the fog hadn't lifted. It never did near Dover. It just lingered, soft, heavy, unforgiving. As I reached the perimeter gate, a car slowed to a stop across the access line. Black. Civilian. Windows up. For a second, I thought they'd sent someone to retrieve me, to change their minds, to finish what the tribunal hadn't, but the rear window lowered slowly just enough to see. Gregory. No uniform, no smile, just a quiet nod. In his lap, a small velvet case. I didn't have to see inside to know what it was. His old insignia. Reinstated ceremonially, not officially. No press, no honors. But someone somewhere had acknowledged the signal, had traced it back to its source, had seen what we saw even if they weren't ready to admit it out loud. I didn't wave. Neither did he. Some silences deserve to stay untouched. Later in my flat above the shipyard, I unpacked the smallest box first. Inside the old field journal Gregory kept locked in his desk. I wasn't supposed to have it, but I had it anyway. The leather was cracked spine held together with tape. It smelled like seawater and ash. I flipped to the first page. His handwriting was tighter back then, before the paranoia, before the exile. But the line he wrote at the top? It hadn't faded at all. The truest signals are the ones that hide beneath the deepest silence. I read it twice, then a third time. Outside, a foghorn cut across the harbor, low, distant, vibrating through glass. I closed the journal, sat back, let the silence settle over me. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel erased. I felt heard. What do you think about the above stories? If you were me, what would you do? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.